price of freedom is death. We're coming to get our check.
Black first, my brothers and my sisters. Hold on, let me get this. Black first, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Afro Elite YouTube channel. I am your host, Afro Elite. And before we get started, please make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel by hitting that subscribe button and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Also, share this on your various social media platforms. That helps the reach and the growth of the channel. Appreciate everybody for being here. How was your weekend? Hope it was good. I hope you had a good weekend. Hope it was a fun weekend. All right. I see our brother Sema 27 is here. It's in here. War with Us is in here. B1 to you. Our good sister Donna is in here. B1 to you. B1 to all of the people in here. You know, today is going to be a very educational broadcast this evening. So you guys might actually wind up needing to take screenshots. Now, I wanted to do this for a while now, to be honest. I've been wanting to do a broadcast like this. I did one somewhat like this years ago, honestly. I did one a few years ago, and I always wanted to redo it. It was a video back. This is way back before I started even doing lives. I did one where I was talking about not necessarily specifically Black women, but I was talking in general about the medical apartheid within Black society. That was a recorded video before whatever. I always wanted to redo it, so now we have a specific time to redo that. Now, in this particular video, I don't like to do the black women and black men divide. I don't like to separate our issues because a lot of our issues are the same issues, even if it's different degrees and variations, is really the same issues. But this specific broadcast is going to specifically be about Black women. Black men, of course, we know we have a notorious history when it comes to the health in America too. The Tuskegee experiment, all that. And we might touch on that. Don't get me wrong, we might touch on that, but that's going to be a different broadcast. We're going to be very focused on the issue in this broadcast right here tonight. I see our good brother Torian is in here. B1 to Torian. Our lovely sister Kiki, darling Kiki. Our brother Emmanuel was good with you, brother. Our good sister Harlem 9 is in here. B1 to you. B1 to every single last one of you all. Now, when we talk about Black women and their health, all of it, the core reason to all of those issues is white supremacy. That is the core reason for those issues. Now, the thing is that they don't want to admit the fact that it's white supremacy, so everybody gaslights the issue, and they'll make it seem as if, and this is something they've done for centuries, honestly, at this point. But they've done a thing where they ignore Black women when it comes to their pain. We can go all the way back to slavery when they used to experiment on enslaved Black women. And so the racism in the medical field started from centuries ago. And I'm just giving you this prefix before we really get into it. So you know that the core root of this problem is racism. All right. It's so bad to the point where who they call the father of gynecology was experimenting on enslaved Black women. His name is J. Marison. I always get the middle name, J. Marison or Morrison. I think it's Marison Sims. And he's quote unquote the father of gynecology, and he used to experiment, and you can look his name up. He used to experiment on enslaved Black women, okay, without anesthesia, which was present during the time he was doing that. But there was a narrative out there that Black people are less human than white people are, and Black women are less human than white women are, so they don't feel pain. That was the narrative that they were talking about, that they don't need to waste the anesthesia on Black women because they don't feel pain anyway. So it's not gonna make a difference. It's a waste. That's the J. Marion Sims. I always get his middle name mixed up. Thank you, Thank you for that. I appreciate you. So that was the reason that they didn't give him any anesthesia. Then we can talk about Henrietta Lacks. Her cells, she had cancer cells that were always multiplying and not dying, and her cells were used by the doctor against her knowledge and against her will. Her cells were used in many different hospitals for experiments, for research, to develop cures, vaccines, different types of medicine and all of that. So there's always been a very racist element when it comes to the medical field and when it comes to black women, black people, but we're, like I said, specifically talking about black women in this particular broadcast. Okay. Yeah, and that's what they called it. Exactly. Torian is right. Yeah. Hella cell. They called it the Hella cells, I believe. Yeah. Thank you, Brother Torian. Shout out to him. Now, when we talk about it, because there's a whole lot of current disparities, current medical disparities that go on today, in today's time. And anytime that gets brought up, the situation automatically goes to, well, that's because black women are overweight and overweight people are unhealthy. And if only they would just eat more healthy and only if they would exercise, then they wouldn't have any health disparities. The only health disparity is because you guys keep going to Popeyes and you guys should be eating salads, and that's it. It's a lot of gaslighting. Now, of course, we're not saying this to undermine the benefits of eating healthy. We're not saying this to undermine the benefits of exercising, because that's very important. But there are other factors that lead to that. I want to get that out there before I actually showed you guys a lot of the data, because we have a lot of data we have to read. So starting off, the first bit of data I wanted to start off with, and this is something that most people don't talk about when it comes to health, is how stress plays a part in this. Stress plays a huge part in this decision. So we're going to go up here and we're going to read this. I'm going to make this right here. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you guys. I always have to set this up in the right way so you guys can actually see what I'm seeing. All right. Now, the stress that black women go through is higher than any other woman in ethnicity in America. And this is by the ncbi.gov. So, or the PubMed Center, right? Yeah, and Henrietta Lacks' family is still, still trying to fight that case to get compensated for it. So, shout out to the family for doing that. Now, it says, starting off here, I'm going to be reading pretty fast with this because there's a lot we have to cover with this. It says, in recent years, researchers have recovered the need to study the impact of stress among black women as a function of their ethnic and gender intersections. Now, they're going to put like a little bit of the gender stuff, like when they talk about intersectionality. So just take that with a grain of salt. All right. Now, it continues to say, while much of the narrative has been focused on the source of stress among women in general, little has been studied about the unique experiences of black women who face the intersectionality to identify with a gender and a race that experiences discrimination. Okay, take that with a grain of salt, because white women do not experience any type of medical apartheid. Okay, they don't at all. They're actually, there are studies that show they're kind of the most cared for group of people in America. But okay, so just ignore that. Just ignore that part, but pay attention to the rest. All right. The result of our quantitative study highlighted the difference between the sources of stress that are perceived as being related to women in general and those perceived as being unique to black women. Scrolling down, it continues to say participants of our focus group ranked health, family, and relationships as the most common sources of stress for women in general, whereas safety of children and raising black children, being the head of the family, and finances as the most common sources of stress among Black women. So right here, this study is telling you that Black women and other groups of women do not at all go through the same levels of stress. With other groups of women, they're talking about, family, relationships, and all that stuff. Where Black women are concerned, they're talking about, okay, I got a Black son, I got Black kids, or whatever, the broken family, finances. These are different stress levels and things that other groups of women do not relate to nearly as much as Black women do. And then it continues to say, these findings are consistent with findings from a few studies that have investigated chronic stress and its impact on health among minority populations. John et al. If that's, I think that's a foreign name, John et al. Whatever his name is. Elucidated, can't talk. The changes in perceived stress from late pre-menopause to post-menopause and identify significant life stressors perceived by a cohort of African American women. It continues to say, results of the study revealed six categories of stress before and after menopause, including finances, caring for family members, relationships, personal health, and aging, race and discrimination, and raising children. John et al. I think his last name is L. That's an interesting name. John et al. Had a sample size of 15 women with an average age of 61 years and a means of PSS. That's like stress. That's like a stress score. It's something stress score, okay, of 17, and then plus minus, that's give or take 6.4. In comparison, we had 33 women in our study with an average age of 43, give or take 10 years, and a PSS score of 17. And then this is, I guess, give or take 6.8. All right. Then it continues to say, while the women in our community are younger, they had similar mean PSS score, and the sources of life stressors identified in both the studies were similar. Okay, so what they're saying here is that the stress scores, the same thing that are stressing the older women out, are the same things that are stressing the younger women out. Now, more likely, how it's supposed to be as you grow up, as your children grow up, get a job, move out the house, your finances become more stable, your life kind of becomes more stable, more slower, less hectic. Your stress levels are supposed to go down. But what this study is saying is that the stress levels of Black women from pretty much the age of 30 on to 60 and 70 remain the same. They're not really going down in any like large numbers. This is pretty much what this is saying here. Okay. I'm sorry, right here. Studies among Black pregnant mothers have reported that emotional and psychological stress resulting from experiences of racial discrimination and financial worries were isolated with negative birth outcomes. And we'll get to the birth rates a little bit later on in the broadcast. Please make sure you guys like this because it's very important for us to get this knowledge out here. It continues to say, other studies have reported combined efforts of perceived social and physical disorders and perceived crime as a major source of stress associated with poor health outcomes such as diabetes and cardiovascular, which is cardiovascular disease. Okay, which is the like heart disease. Okay, now this, when you actually look at the numbers and what the studies say, they're not saying this is because Black women don't eat right. Now, of course, eating healthy is always going to be the best for you. This isn't to justify unhealthy eating. This is not what the purpose of this is for. But this is so we can have the numbers, so the situation isn't always being gaslighted where if y'all would just eat a sandwich here and there, it wouldn't be that big of an issue. Now, let me see. Where am I? Okay, right here. Oh, right here. The top stressors identified by our focus group participants are notable as they are consistent with phenomena of the Sojourner syndrome, like the Sojourner syndrome, or the superwoman schema that describes the multiple roles in society and social identities of Black women that are based in history that require Black women to be strong, self-reliant, self-sacrificing in their roles as the caterer of the family. So this is saying is that whole strong and independent and a woman can do it all by herself and she's the backbone of the family and the head of the family. All of this stuff is putting unnecessary and additional stress on Black women that other women don't have to go through. Now, a lot of that is financial, but when the dominant society markets that as if that's something positive, it's not positive. It's not positive for the family, nor is it positive for the woman's health in the long run. Okay, no matter what age she is, whether she's young or old, it doesn't matter. Okay, that creates an additional level of stress, which can lead, and a lot of times does lead, to poorer health. All right. It continues to say, such roles are often times unwillingly taken on by them, possibly leading to complex adaptive partners, or patterns where needs of others precede over their own needs and requirements. Okay, so this is pretty much talking about the children or whatever, or sometimes your parents have to come stay with you or whatever the case is. So it all of that stuff adds to the stress that Black women have to go through. Now, it continues to say, stressors can induce short-term responses, which may manifest as behavioral, which is overeating. This is important that we get this straight, because I've been saying this for a long time. A lot of the super 300, 400 pound plus people that you see walking around, a lot of that is a symptom of a much bigger problem. They're overeating. And I'm not just talking about the person who just eats too much cake, and doesn't go to the gym. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the big obese size people, the 300, 400 plus size people. Those are people who have problems outside of the overeating, and their overeating is really psychological coping mechanism. Okay, that's what it is. All right. Now, it continues to say psychological, and then this is elevated blood pressure or cholesterol hormones, or psychological, and this is disturbed sleep. All right. Repeated experience of short-term effects could lead to irreversible long-term effects. Stress may be related to body weight and weight change through several mechanisms. People who overeat in response to stress, and this is why when we talk about people overeating, we have to put that into its proper perspective. All right. And we're going to get even more into that right after this. Now, this is a very long chart. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I just want to get the stress part out of the way, because that oftentimes is overlooked when we're talking about the health of people. All right. Now, I'm going to start from the beginning of the sentence. It says, people who overeat in response to stress are likely to choose foods that are high in fat and or sugar content. High stress levels may also deter individuals from engaging in physical activity or result in sleep impairment, which may lead to enhanced appetite, cravings, or decreased motivation for physical activity. So all of these things play a factor. The more unhealthy, fatty, sugary foods that you eat, that makes a person less willing or less likely to, get up and go to the gym and all that stuff. And the more stressed you are, the more likely you are to eat some of that stuff. And we're gonna even get even further into that a lot, okay? Because it's not just women being stressed, all right, and overeating. That's not the only factor. We're going to get into more factors later on, all right? Now, it says the racial disparity, and in the prevalence of obesity between white and black Americans, particularly women, could possibly be attributed to the unique and or added stress black women may experience in the context of the U.S. society as compared with white women. When asked about how stressors could affect body weight, our study participants provided a wide range of options, but voted emotional eating, not enough time for exercise, and eating fast food due to lack of time or money as the top reasons as to how stressors influence women's weight. Now, the number one thing they say, emotional eating, a lot of people who overeat, and I've been saying this for years, a lot of the obese people that you see overeat, a lot of that is emotional eating because they use food as almost like a lightweight drug. They use food as like a coping mechanism because they have other things going on that are stressing them out. And when they eat food, they get they feel happy with the dopamine and all that stuff, which is why they tend to eat fattier and more sugary foods. Okay, all of these things come to play. Also, due to lack of time for cooking. Now, lack of time and money. We're going to get into that right after we get into this. All right. So when we look at women's health, black women's health, we have to factor in all of these things. We can't just say, okay, well, if y'all eat a salad, then everything's going to be hunky-dory and everything's going to be fine, because it won't be. All right. You have to look at all of the other factors as well, too. Now, it continues to say, these observations suggest that the women in our focus group had increased awareness about the relationship between stress and unhealthy habits contributing to obesity. A baseline understanding and or awareness about the impact of stress on health can be instrumental in designing behavior interventions to manage stress. Behavioral or psychological interventions that behavior that why can I not pronounce this word? My tongue is twisting right now. Let me slow down. Behavioral or psychological interventions that meditate the effects of stress, which means cure, if y'all, of course y'all knew. The effects of stress may alter the short-term and long-term effects of chronic stress. These may include individual factors such as coping behaviors. See, that's exactly what I was saying. This is coping mechanisms, coping behaviors, as well as social factors such as access to material resources and social support. When they say material resources, they mean you putting health clinics in the black community that are accessible. A lot of black women do not have adequate health insurance to go to the doctor for just regular checkups and things like that. Their job doesn't provide them the health insurance that they need, or whatever the case is. So there's a lot of them who use copay. There's a lot of them who have to pay out of pocket. Now, they're not going to talk about this, but studies also back that up as well, too. All right. On top of all of the racism in the medical field. Okay. So it says similarly, interventions to reduce obesity among Black women cannot just focus on diet and physical activity alone, but should also take into account management of stress. All right. So for those who might say, oh, Black women just need to, stop drinking Pepsi and Coke, they also have to consider the stress factor. All right. Which is due to the racial factor. All right. It says findings from this study can be used to inform current behavioral weight loss interventions to include evidence-based stress management strategies as an approach to improve weight loss outcomes among Black women with elevated stress levels. Okay. Then it continues to say, our study had few limitations, including a small sample size, also convenient sampling of participants, and their qualitative design of the study limits internal validity and generability of the study. Okay. So this study was small, is what they're saying. The study was small, and there were a limited amount of people who they had participate in the study. So their numbers, they're saying like, this is what we got from the study, but this isn't the full numbers. But based off the study, this is what they concluded. All right. So they're just giving you that. So people don't take this as an absolute, because it's not like it was a huge study. But then it continues to say, this approach allows for greater insight to perceptions that can be used to inform future studies and interventions. Then it concludes saying, in conclusion, prior research has shown that Black women report higher psychological stress compared with other demographic groups in the United States. This study provides insight into how the intersectionality of two historically marginalized groups, Black Americans and women, okay, y'all, when they say intersectionality, y'all know, take it with a grain of salt, in groups may result in unique stress experience for Black women. These unique experiences should be considered when offering stress management strategies to improve the mental and physical health of this population. So the reason why I wanted to get that out the way is because a lot of time when we talk about Black women's health, a lot of that is Black women don't eat right. And that's something that you have to factor in. But you can't ignore all the other factors. See, what the dominant society will do is say, oh, you just eat right, to victim blame, to put the blame on you and the responsibility solely on them. And they say, hey, if you just eat right, then, it won't be a problem. It's not racism. Can't say it's racism. You're the one who's deciding to eat that, not us. So that's the only reason for the disparity. So I just showed you, based off the study, is the stress that contributes to a lot of the overeating. All right. And other studies back that up as well, too. Now, I want to show you something else. Now, we get into the stress, and when it comes to time, a lot of people say they don't have time to cook. And a lot of people say they have inadequate stress. So I wanted to show this statistic coming up here, this study, when it comes to, if I can, hold on. I'm going to have to, I had to reset my computer. So that is why, oh my goodness. Okay, hold on. I had to reset my computer. Nope. That is why I don't have it pulled up. Forgot to pull it up right before. Oh my goodness, man. It's ridiculous. Okay, here it is. So check this out. I'm going to show a little bit of this. Now, this goes to the shifts, and we're going to get into certain things when it comes to shifts. Now, we're talking about psychological duress. All right. Now, the print is small, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit right here. Now, we're just going to talk about this because let's talk about a lot of things in general. Now, diurnal Okay, that means daytime is like the opposite of nocturnal. Diurnal creatures as humans. That means humans that stay up in the daytime when the sun is out and then go to sleep at nighttime. Most humans are like that. Now there are some humans that like tend to, have a lot of energy at night just naturally, and those and sleep during the day. Some people are like that, but most humans are like that. Dinorm I can't pronounce it. Dinormal, which means that they stay up in the daytime when the sun is out and they go to sleep at night. Okay, their body starts to shut down and they start to get tired in the night. Now it says the normal creatures as humans staying up at night and sleeping during the day is not well conducted for physical and psychological self. Okay. Shift workers often complain about sleep deprivation, which leads to forgetfulness, lack of interest, low energy, irritability, nervousness, anxiety, fatigue, moodiness, and may result in depression. Then, because it cites a lot of stuff right here, then it continues to say there is seen a prominent reduction in coping with stress, and we were just talking about stress, prominent reduction in coping with stress and resistance to adverse psychological problems. Now it says work balance life due to night shift suffers as well due to decrease in social activities compared to day shift workers. So workers who work at night tend to not have a lot of balance in their life, which, and by saying that, I'm gonna tell you, because I've used to work at night before, as I pulled this other thing up. I worked, it was kind of at night. As you guys, if you guys have been following me, you guys know I used to work at UPS. I worked at UPS for 4 years. Okay. And I've also worked at Amazon. The UPS shift, it wasn't night. It was technically the sunrise shift. I worked the sunrise shift, which at that point, when I was working, it was from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. But sometimes they would call you in to be at 3 a.m. But that was it's not the overnight shift. Okay. Most shifts, they have 3 shifts. They have the day shift, they have like the evening shift, and then they have the night shift. At UPS, they had 4 shifts. They had the day shift, the afternoon shift, the evening shift, and then the sunrise shift. So they broke it up into 4. But the thing is that a lot of times I had to train my body to be up around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning so I can get to work. Okay. So when I would train, and my body would be used to that for 4 years, Monday through Friday, with the exception of holidays and like vacation days. I would have to get up and be at work. I would have to be at work at 4 o'clock. Okay. At the latest, if not like on holiday times when they would need you to be there earlier. So over time, your body gets used to that. And the thing is that when you leave work, a lot of times people who work overnight, they don't really get to go to sleep. Or if they do go home and go to sleep, they get to take only like a small nap because they still have to handle their business throughout the day. And most businesses and stuff like that, they close if you got to like go to the bank or go to the grocery store, go wherever to handle business. A lot of that stuff you have to handle during the day. You can't wait like super late at night. So they are only able to sleep a small amount throughout the day if they get a chance to sleep at all. And this isn't even factoring if they have kids, you know what I'm saying? Because you have to, depending on the age of the kids, get the kids ready to go to school, take care of the babies, whatever the case is, other responsibilities in the house. All of that stuff can really make a person sleep deprived. Even when I left UPS, my body is just still, it was so used to being up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to work. So it's not like I would have to, at a certain point in time, I'm not dragging my feet. Is when my alarm hits 3 o'clock, my body's already operating like, okay, I can just get up out of bed. So a lot of times it took me a while to adjust after leaving UPS, and I didn't have to. After leaving UPS, I would never have to wake up at 3 o'clock. Why does a person have to wake up at 3 o'clock? So I didn't have to wake up at 3 o'clock, but a lot of times my body would still automatically either wake me up or something like that. Or if my body would wake me up, it would be hard for me to go back to sleep because your body is so used to being up at that time in the middle of the night. So your body's not used to going to sleeping during that particular time. So even if you leave that shift or whatever the case is, it's still, depending on how long you work there, it still takes a while for your body to catch up with that, you know. So a lot of that is, it can contribute to your stress because you're missing out on social activities, because a lot of times throughout the day you're sleeping and at night you have to work. So you're always, throughout the day, you're always in this like moody and drowsy and tired state because you're not really getting the adequate hours of sleep that you need. Okay. Also too, it can lead you to eating more unhealthy because a lot of times you don't really have time unless you meal prep, which is a good thing. But unless you meal prep, you don't really have a lot of time to get something to eat. If you got to grab something to eat before work or whatever the case is, a lot of times too, they're not at like the healthy restaurants and smoothies places or whatever. They're not open in the middle of the night. What's open in the middle of the night? McDonald's, Taco Bell, and stuff like that. So if you go on break in the middle of the night, that's what's going to be open for you to eat if you did not bring food there. So all of these things, and I'm giving you my personal experience, all of these things come into factor. Okay, which leads people to be more stressed out because you're missing out on social events, you're missing out on family, you're missing out on activities, you're not sleeping because you have to handle business and work and all of that. So a lot of that adds to a person's stress. So I want to show you guys this. Now this is from, and I'm literally giving you guys all of the numbers to this because I'm not making any of this up. I'm mixing this with a little bit of my personal experience so you guys can understand that I know what I'm talking about. But I'm also showing you the numbers as well too. All right. Okay. Yeah. And another thing, that's a good point, Sister Miriam. Some shifts do it where there's just two 12-hour shifts. It's an 11 to 7. I mean, it's a 7 to 7 a.m., 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Okay. Now, this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this is talking about the third shift. All right. Now, if you look at the numbers here, it says percent working regular daytime shift. This is the morning shift. This is waking up, being at work at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and getting off at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. This is that. All right. And this is looking through different, race, age demographics. This is looking up through men and women. Now, men tend to work third shift more because there's a lot of third shift includes things like overnight security, places like facilities, factories like UPS. Well, UPS not like a factory, shipping companies, UPS, truckers. They got to work overnight. And those things are more male-dominated fields. A lot of times when the women, they'll work overnight, that stuff tends to be more often in like the medical field, nursing, CNAs, things like that. All right. So it's looking here, and you can see more women work in the day than men. And as you can see here in the evening times, there are more men who work in the evening and night shifts than women. Small amount more women in night than men, and that's probably in more recent times. Now, when we get to the racial aspect of it, though, and you see majority, this is the daytime, majority of the white people, they'll work in the day. Now, when it comes to Black or African American, that's 75%. But then when we get to the evening and night, remember, those are over here after the total, there's a solid amount of Black people, an overwhelming majority of Black people who tend to work the evening and the night shifts over all these other racial demographics. You see 5.3, and this doesn't break it down as far as gender, but just race, 5.3 in evening for white and 3.2 in night, okay, versus a 9 point is almost double a 9.0 for black people, and then a 5.4 for overnight. Okay, even Asians who work more evening than their white counterparts, they don't even work as many evenings as black people do. Okay, and they really don't work as many overnights. And then even when we go to Hispanics, and a lot of the Hispanics, they're white, right? Even when we go to Hispanics, a lot of the Hispanics don't work. If you compare the 9, this is the evening shift, right? The Hispanics is 6.0, which is slightly under, surprisingly, slightly under the Asian population for working night shift, but they're second when it comes to working overnight. So when it comes to working evenings and overnight, which are stressful shifts because of, like I was saying before, the lack of social activities, the cramming, because you have to fit a lot in your day if you are going to take a nap. So there's a lot of cramming that you have to do in the day before certain things close. If you got to go shopping, especially if you have children you have to take care of, other things that you do throughout your life. So it's a lot of cramming. So that adds to the level of stress, right? Now, what's interesting, and I'm showing you this, and they're saying mostly it's like men who work overnight, but when you see the racial demographics, you can clearly add it up to say more black women work overnight than any other group of women. Okay, more black people, but we're talking about black women in this instance. More black women work overnight than any other group of women. Now, what I found interesting when I was researching this situation is this statistic, and I brought this chart up here. When we look at this data tells us, hold on, let me make it. This data tells us the most common ethnicity among third shift, which is the night shift, supervisors is white, which makes up 63.5% of all third shift supervisors. Comparatively, 14.1 of third shift supervisors are Hispanic or Latino, and a lot of that is qualified as white as well too. And then third shift supervisors after the Hispanics are 12.3 of third shift supervisors are white, or black or African American. And you can see the pie chart right here. Now, they brought up other racial demographics. I wanted you to see it fully. They brought up other racial demographics, but since I wasn't going to display all of the racial demographics, you can see an overwhelming majority of the supervisors are white and Hispanic. Okay, but when you look at the actual Bureau of Labor Statistics, I'm going to take this off. When you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right, you can see the majority of the actual workers here are black. So mostly it's the black people who are working the third shift and the second shift, the night shift and the evening shift. Okay, those hours, pretty much anything past like 5 on going on to the morning, 6 or going on 6 p.m. to the morning time are black people. Of the solid majority of the workers there are black, yet the supervisors are white. A big solid majority of the supervisors are white, close to 6, because when you count the Hispanics that are actually white, that's about 65%. 65% of them are white. So the people who are actually lifting the loads and doing the heavy work, they're black. But the people who are sitting at their desks, taking naps in their office, drinking coffee the whole time, they're white. All right. I mean, what is America without a plantation? And these are factors that contribute to the racial health disparities that black women have to go through. All right. So it's important that we have all of the knowledge so we can take everything and put everything into its proper perspective. Now, here's something else that I wanted to read as well too. Hold on. All right. Yeah, this one. Let me remove this, get this off, because there's other things that I want to talk about. So now we can know what are some of the things that add on to the stress factor, you know. So when they say women are stressed, black women are stressed out, you can say eat healthier, which is true. And I'm not undermining that. I'm not saying that it's a justification for eating unhealthy. I'm not saying that. But we're not going to say the entire reason for this medical apartheid, the entire reason for this is because black women won't stop going to McDonald's. We're not going to say that. All right. So let me pull this up, because this is something I've been talking about for a while too. Now it says, hold on, let me see. No, oh man, okay, my bad. We're going to get to that a little bit later. We're going to end on that actually, because I want to play some videos with that too. So I apologize for showing the wrong link. I want to show you this one before we get on to it. All right. Now, higher breast cancer risk among black women shows needs for earlier screening. Okay, this was a study done. This was done recently in April of 2023. Okay. Now I'm going to let this ad play because it gives a brief thing about what cancer is. Oh, no. Okay. That's not even a video. Sometimes these websites be doing something weird, but we're going to get into it. Okay. We're not going to let that stop us. We can get this off the way. It says a study released in the Journal of the American Medical Association last week has shed some light on how breast cancer rates have been disproportionately affecting black female patients and pressed for earlier screenings. Okay, a study found that black women had the same risk of dying from breast cancer if they were screened starting at age 42 as the general population had screening started at the recommended age of 50. So what they're saying here is that even when black women are screened 8 years earlier, or almost a decade earlier, they still have the same rates of dying. Now, the thing is that with cancer, a lot of the time, cancer becomes more survivable when you detect it early, when you screen for it and when it's detected early. So what they recommend, what the recommended age is at 50. That's when black women should start regularly getting checks for breast cancer. But they're saying even when younger black women get screenings and get checks for breast cancer, they still have the same rate of dying as older women of non-black racial groups. All right. So that's what they're saying right there. Now, it says researchers who examined data from 415,277 breast cancer deaths between 2011 and 2020 found that breast cancer death rates for women between 40 and 49 are highest among black female patients at a rate of 27 deaths per 100,000. Now it continues to say, among the researchers noted that there is, quote, currently insignificant data to make specific recommendations for different racial and ethnic populations. Now, that's some BS. The current recommendation is in white supremacy, because that's the reason. It's white supremacy. That is the reason for it, okay? Then they continue to say, they said that race and ethnicity need to be factored into optimize the benefit of screening, Okay, so a lot of like the stress and the health disparities and stuff like that, they don't factor that in when they're operating or when they're talking to black women. Okay. Please, y'all, let's make sure we leave a like here and share this so we can get this information out. It seems like when we talk about health, nobody wants to be a part of that. Now, we were talking about some gossip. If I was roasting somebody, there'd be a 100 more people in the chat room. But we're talking about health, so nobody wants to be a part. And I understood that before I did it. And it's fine. Because the people who are here, they're going to benefit from the knowledge. I understand it's a holiday too. So we definitely want to share this because there's going to be a lot of views on the playback. Even if it's not live, it's going to be a lot of views on the playback. Exactly, Donna. Let's get those likes up as well too. And the YouTube algorithm is definitely not going to want us talking about black women's health. They're not going to want to do that at all. So we got to make sure that we kind of blow this video up. All right, because this is the data that they don't tell you about. Now, it says, for screenings that started at 50, black female patients reached that threshold for breast cancer at 42, while non-Hispanic white females at 51, American Indian and Alaskan Native and Hispanic females at 57, and Asian and Pacific Islander females at 61, according to the study. For screening that started at 40, black females could reach the risk threshold level at 34, white females at 41, Hispanic, American Indian, and Alaskan Native, and Asian or Pacific Islander females at age 43, research said. So what they're saying is the same studies, all of the same studies that are done to these other racial groups of people, even if black women get their screenings earlier, they risk catching the same results, the same death rates as the other women who don't check as early as black women check. Now, the thing is with cancer, when you check it, the faster you get it checked out, the more curable it is, like I said before. So when black women get it checked out, if it gets detected earlier, they should have, theoretically, they should have a higher rate of survival. But what they're saying is that even though they check early, due to the study, they check earlier than other women, they still have the same death rate than older women do. Okay, that's what it's saying. Also says, researchers acknowledge their study didn't look as possible at the possible risk of early breast cancer screenings for various race and ethnicities, such as false positives and the mental and emotional toll of waiting for test results. Although black women may experience disproportionate rates of false positives because of breast density, the added risk of false positives from early screening may be balanced by the benefits associated with earlier breast cancer detection in this group, research said. So what they're saying with this is it's better to get a false positive so you can start getting ready for it, starting the treatments and stuff. It's kind of better because black women, with this, the study detected is that black women's breasts are denser than breasts of non-black women. So due to that, there can be a higher risk of false positives. Now, the false positive, they say they kind of balance out all of the fact that a lot of the black women get ignored when it comes to getting screenings for breast cancer, is what they're saying. Okay. Then it says, the report concluded that to decrease breast cancer mortality, quote, the starting age for the general population could be decreased from 50 to 45 or 40, like that has done for oh boy, my tongue is twisting when it comes to certain medical words. Colorectal cancer, okay, screening in the U.S. All right, and health policy makers may consider the alternative, risk-adapted approach in which individuals, such as black females, who are at higher risk are screened earlier. All right. All right. Now it's saying here, several organizations have different recommendations for breast cancer screenings. The United States Preventative... Hold on, let me take a sip of water real quick. Apologize. Gotta drink some water. It's a little hot in here. The United States Preventative Service Task Force says women ages 50 to 74 should get a mammogram every 2 years, and women 40 to 49 should talk to their doctors about mammograms. Okay. Continues to say, the American Cancer Society, which found that Black women have the lowest 5-year relative breast cancer survival rate compared to all other racial ethnic groups, recommended that women that meant risk women at my fault women at risk levels should start annual mammograms, no, annual mammography screening for age 45, but have the opportunity to start at age 40. So what they're saying pretty much is that women about 40 years old should start getting screenings for breast cancer. But to be totally honest, and we're going to show another video. I'm going to play a video right after this. But to be totally honest, in my personal, Afro Elite's personal opinion, Black women should start earlier than age 40. Okay? They should start around their like mid-30s, to be honest with you. Okay? Because to be totally honest, you can develop cancer at any age. It's not, even though you have a higher risk of cancer at a certain age, kids have cancer. You can develop cancer at any age. So you should always be aware of that. You should never be a thing, well, you know, I'm still young, so that's not, I don't have to worry about that. So you definitely want to make sure you're protected, especially because of that. Okay. Now, it says Dr. Karif Kamal, the chief patient officer of the American Cancer Society, told ABC News that more research is showing a trend of younger women being diagnosed with breast cancer, and earlier screenings that are tailor-made based on the patient's race may be needed. All right. Then it continues to say, I think it highlights beyond race, people should evaluate their own risk of breast cancer, such as family history and the age at which they are diagnosed. So definitely what they're saying here is that if you have cancer in your family, more than likely you're going to have, because cancer is really about cells. So if you have cancer, if your dad has cancer, your mom has cancer, your grandma, or whatever, more than likely, though, you'll have a higher risk of developing cancer. Okay, and that's unfortunate. And it's not even just a Black thing. That's just the human thing. So if you know, okay, my grandma had cancer, my grandpa, my dad, my mom, they have cancer, even if they survived it, then you might have a higher risk of cancer. And even if you don't, your kids might. You know what I'm saying? So definitely, if you have cancer in your family, or any disease really, but we're just talking about cancer. But if you have cancer in your family, you definitely want to be more cautious. Make sure you get your checkups or whatever. All right. Now, I want to show you this video. This is what, now they sit up there and they talk about, they have no idea why cancer is like this or whatever. I want to show you this video about this woman. All right. Now, before we do that, let me play this, because I don't want this to get messed with. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, now check this out.
Pill that we can put people on to help keep that cancer away.
This comes from ABC. PBS. I say that. PBS News. All right.
There was no pill for Donna Hayes. She was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer last May. She was just 32 years old.
She was diagnosed, so you know, she was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer at 32 years old. She was 32. That's young. This is what I'm saying. A lot of black women, they need to at the age of, well, at the age of 30, really, if not before that, okay, they need to start getting checkups or whatever the case is. I wouldn't even recommend waiting to what they say 40 years old or whatever. Even though you might have a higher risk at that age, you should start younger than that. Okay, she was 32, mind you. Now let's continue.
Women are also more likely to develop breast cancer at a younger age.
So it started off with a lump in my chest. Like anybody else, I ignored it. Didn't think. I'm like, I'm 32. There's no way that this is cancer. My doctor told me you're too young for it to be cancer, so more likely it's a cyst. So I refer you to ultrasound. So we got the ultrasound. The technician didn't like what they saw, so they referred me to get a biopsy. The biopsy confirmed that it was cancerous. When I got the first diagnosis, I was scared. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to leave my kids and my husband and stuff. Like, I was just scared.
Her slight delay in seeking treatment was in part because of the pandemic and in part because of fear and responsibility.
As the Black culture in a whole, we're scared of doctors. You're scared of bad news. You don't want bad news because you don't know how to handle bad news. So you tend to not go to the doctors. You tend to not go to the dentist. You tend to put things on the back burner, especially Black mothers, because they're caring more so for their kids or the household. So it's like, I can't afford to be sick. I got to make sure everything is straight. So you tend to forget about yourself.
Hampton says those feelings are common among Black women.
Many of them are single head of household, primary caregivers, you may be working a couple different jobs. And so their health is just not at the top of the list. They'll put their children first, their parents first, they'll put everyone else first.
But as well, and I'm glad she said that as well too, because a lot of women, a lot of Black women have a high rate of working multiple different jobs. It's not like no one full-time job and then that's it. A lot of women, Black women, I mean, they have a high rate of working multiple jobs, which can add another level of stress, because when you work multiple jobs, you don't want your jobs to kind of conflict with each other. So a lot of that is you're working one job in the day and then you're working another job at night. Okay, which increases the hour of work, which increases the lack of sleep you might have, increases the amount of stress you might have. A lot of that is a factor too.
Women, and probably you and I are testament to, we put everybody first.
Over the past year, Hayes juggled raising 4 kids with courses of chemo, a double mastectomy, and radiation.
Tell me a little bit about the initial doctor saying you're too young for cancer, it's probably a cyst. When you think about that now, was that helpful or do you find that to be problematic?
If you're telling your doctor something's wrong, they should automatically just assume you know your body, so they should just help you out. I mean, they shouldn't tell you like, hey, you're too young. This can't happen to you, because clearly it can happen to you.
Depending on a woman's...
Now, here's the thing. The question, that's why I wanted to play. I wanted to build all of that up until the last question. I'm gonna let her say the question again. She asks, how do you feel the doctor? Now, when she went to the doctor the very first time, the doctor brushed her off. The doctor said, you're too young for cancer, which is ridiculous, because there's no such age as too young for cancer. That is not true. You have whole hospitals dedicated to children with cancer. So that is not true at all, that anybody can be quote unquote too young for cancer. So they're saying, so this doctor says, you're too young for cancer is probably, what do you say, a cyst or something like that. Which is really just like a lot of pus or whatever the case is. And when he said a cyst, that meant the lymph nodes, which is a sign of a tumor or something, of cancer, which is that. All right. Now, what race do you guys think? If you guys think the doctor was a white doctor that told her that, can you leave a 1 in the chat room? I want to see something, because I don't want to be the paranoid person. If you think the doctor who said it's not cancer and don't worry about it, if you think the doctor was white, leave a 1 in the chat room. If you think the doctor wasn't white, leave a 2 in the chat room. I want to see how many people suspect that the doctor that said that this woman who came in with cancer, oh, she's too young for cancer, It's probably just a cyst. Don't worry about it. Okay. Somebody said it might be a tether. Could possibly. Possibly. We can't rule that out. We got a lot of ones in the chat. A lot of ones in the chat. Now, this is what she says too.
The initial doctor saying you're too young for cancer, it's probably a cyst. When you think about that now, was that helpful or do you find that to be problematic?
If you're telling your doctor something's wrong, they should automatically just assume you know your body, so they should just help you.
Now, earlier in the live, I was talking about, and this is why I talked about this very early in the live. I was talking about earlier in the live when it comes to the racism in the healthcare field, okay? And this goes all the way back to when they used to experiment on Black women in the medical field. When they used to experiment on them in the medical field, and they used to talk about Black women, they don't really feel pain. A lot of them, they're exaggerating, they're tripping. So a lot of them, they don't like to give Black women pain pills. They don't like to give Black women anesthesia. They don't like to really care when it comes to Black women talking about issues that they have when they go in. They come in and they are like, well, it's probably nothing. You just probably need to just take a nap and that's it. Please leave. And that's how Black women are treated in the medical field quite often. Now, her cancer was very severe. So it's a really good thing that she got it double checked by another professional. And when she got it double checked, when she said she had an ultrasound, and then the ultrasound said, okay, you do have cancer. She didn't just take the doctor's word for it, like, oh, okay, well, yeah, this is probably just a cyst. I'm going to deal with it later since it's not that big of an issue, because it could have cost her life if she decided to do that, but she didn't. All right. Shout out to our good sister Q2Ys for the $4.99 super sticker. I'm glad that you're able to watch this. Sister, thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for your participation and your contribution. I appreciate it very, very much. Okay. Exactly. Okay. You always want to get, yes, I might have third option. Yeah. You always want to have multiple opinions, even if it's a doctor that, you quote unquote trust, even if it's a doctor that you've been going to for a while or whatever the case is. When it comes to situations as serious as breast cancer or any type of cancer or anything like that, you want to get a second opinion, because the second opinion is what saved her life. Now, exactly, you guys are right. A lot of the doctors in her situation are very dismissive when it comes to situations talking about cancer and other things like that. Now, if they just leave it alone and they say, oh, well, I mean, it's cancer, it is what it is, or it's not cancer, so I'm not going to worry about it, they wind up, the stage of cancer gets too bad and it winds up taking their life, or they have to live with much more severe damage, even if they do survive from it. Okay. So I'm glad that the sister was able to do that and able to get treatment for her cancer. I'm really glad that she double checked with that. But that's something a lot of Black women suffer from. A lot of Black women suffer from that. Okay. So if you feel like the doctor is blowing you off or whatever the case is, you definitely go to another doctor or whatever the case. And this isn't just the doctor. If you feel like if this isn't just cancer, if you feel like it's another issue that you have going on and you go to the doctors and the doctors seem to want to rush you out the place, the doctors seem to be very dismissive, very impatient, okay? The doctors are gaslighting you, saying you're exaggerating, don't really want to help with care. Now, these doctors sit up there giving Percocets to white people just cause, but they don't want to give you nothing, so definitely get another opinion. Preferably go to an on-code FBA doctor, preferably. Okay, I understand that option is limited, but that's the preferred option. Okay. Now, I want to talk about, so we talked about that. So definitely for the Black women out there, make sure you guys get your screenings. Make sure you guys, take all your preventative measures and everything, especially if you have a history of it. because cancer has a tendency, if you have it once, it does have a tendency to come back. So you definitely want to be careful with that, especially if you have that in your family. Definitely want to be careful with that as well too. I want to show something else. I know it's been pretty loaded tonight, but I want to show you guys something else as well too. Okay. I want to show a couple other things. So I know it's been pretty loaded. All right. Now this one says, why do so many Black women die in pregnancy? Reason one, doctors don't take them seriously. Okay. Which is what we were saying. All right. Now, this is Birmingham, Alabama. Angelica Lyons knew it was dangerous for Black women to give birth in America. Okay. As a public health instructor, she taught college students about racial health disparities, including the fact that Black women in the U.S. are nearly 3 times more likely to die during pregnancy or delivering than any other race. Okay. So that literally means for every 10 white women that die, 30 Black women die. Okay. That's a huge number. 3 times more likely. That's a giant, huge number. It continues to say her home state of Alabama is the 3rd highest maternal mortality rate in the nation. All right. Continues to say, then in 2019, it nearly happened to her. What should have been a joyous first pregnancy quickly turned into a nightmare when she began to suffer a debilitating stomach pain. Her pleas for help were shrugged off, she said, and she repeatedly sent home from the hospital. So that means she kept going back to the hospital. They kept saying, nothing's wrong with you, go home. They kept saying that, and this was in Alabama in 2019. Doctors and nurses told her she was suffering from normal contractions, she said, even as her abnormal pain worsened and she began to vomit bile. And bile in this situation, that's pretty much like stomach acid. Okay. When people throw up, normally people throw up food. When you vomit bile, that means there's no food in your stomach to even throw up. You're throwing this, like literally you're throwing up stomach acid. That's when a lot of times when people throw up bile, that's when the throw up, and I know this is kind of nasty, but I gotta say it. That's when the throw up tends to be like a greenish or color, a greenish or like a brownish kind of color. Okay. And it's really liquidy. Okay. It's not chunky because there's no food. It's not thick because there's no food. You're not throwing any food up. It's like acid. Okay. It's the thing. It's like a fluid in your stomach that helps with the digestion. Okay. Now it continues to say, Angelica said she wasn't taken seriously until a searing pain rocked throughout her body and her baby's heart rate plummeted. She was pregnant at the time. All right. Rushed into the emergency room for emergency cesarean section, which is a C-section. Okay. They rushed her to get a C-section months before her due date. So it's not like she was a couple weeks before. This was months before her due date rate, which studies also show, and I think this is going to say it in an article if I wasn't reading it in a different chart, when babies are born prematurely, that can lead to a higher risk of the baby mortality rate or the baby having health issues. All right. So, and all of this, Black women go through higher than any other groups of women. All right. Now, where was it? Now, right here, we're right here. Even more disheartening, Angelica worked at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, the university affiliated with the hospital that treated her. Her experience is a reflection of the medical racism, bias, and inactive care that Black Americans endure. Black women have the highest maternal mortality rate in the United States, 69.9 per 100,000 live births for 2021. Almost 3 times the rate for white women, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And now it continues to say, Black babies are more likely to die and also more likely to be born prematurely, setting the stage for health issues that could follow them throughout their lives. All right. So this doesn't just affect the Black women in their pregnancy. This also affects their Black babies as well, too. Now here, this shows the actual chart. All right. So y'all can, if y'all want to screenshot this, y'all can do that as well, too. Now it says African American children are more likely than other racial and ethnic groups to be born prematurely, which can lead to developmental and other health issues. Now, this is the percentage of births that were premature. Okay, so 14.8, most of the premature deaths among babies are Black. Out of all of the other races, they're Black, okay? Now, it continues to say, race plays a huge part, especially in the South, in terms of how you are treated, Angelica said, and the effects are catastrophic. People are dying. Now, this is Angelica here as she was given the interview. Then it continues to say, to be Black anywhere in America is to experience higher rates of chronic ailments like asthma, diabetes, high blood pressure, Alzheimer's, and most recently, I'm not even going to say that, C19, the pandemic. Now, I'm pausing right here before we say anything. Don't you guys remember when the pandemic first started? Okay, and this was like in February-ish of 2020. Okay, when it first started, and it wasn't Black people getting it. It was a lot of whites and Asians who were actually getting the sickness. And it was so little Black people, or none really at all, that it was rumors that Black people were immune to it. Remember? If you guys remember that when it first popped off, no Black people were getting it at all. And it was kind of going around. It was a rumor going around like, hey, Black people might be immune to this disease. And then almost overnight, you see the news saying, it's crazy. Why aren't Black people not getting it? This doesn't make any sense at all. Black people weren't getting it at all. To then overnight, the news just came up, oh, Black people are disproportionately affected by this pandemic. It was like an overnight thing. So this is to let you know that a lot of that was engineered. Then you started seeing videos of people licking their hands and touching cards, touching train rails and things like that, things that people put their hands on all the time. So a lot of that was engineered. It was almost like that virus that Black people were not getting, the Black community wasn't affected by, was implanted in the community. Allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly, but that's kind of what a lot of people speculated. So it's very interesting that they say that. Exactly. They're saying that they flipped the script for real. The story switched up like overnight. I remember seeing that when the news was saying, oh, the Black community are disproportionately affected by it. I was like, last week, they were saying that there were no cases in the Black community. So how will we no cases? And then 2-3 days later, we're the ones who are most disproportionately affected by it. And then our cases were the deadliest cases. We weren't getting it at all. And then we were disproportionately getting it. And then our cases were the most severe cases. That didn't make any sense unless it's engineered. It doesn't naturally happen that way. It doesn't make sense. It can't naturally happen that way. Black people's skin doesn't absorb disease. Our skin doesn't absorb disease. We're not a sickly group of people. the sicknesses that happen to Black people within the Black community, that is engineered to be that way. Just like with the situation with the pandemic. But let's continue. All right. Then it continues to say, we're right here. Then it continues to say Black Americans have less access to adequate medical care. Their life expectancy is shorter. Now, earlier in the broadcast, I was saying the same thing as well, too. Black people don't tend to have adequate medical care, health insurance. You know, the doctors that they do go to don't care about them. So the doctors aren't really going to look into it the way they should. The nurses aren't really going to look into it the way they should. Right? Continues to say, for birth and death, regardless of wealth or social standings, there are far more likely to get sick and die from common ailments. Black Americans' health issues have long been excuse me. It got like a small sore throat. I got to drink some water. Have long been ascribed to genetics or behavior, when in actuality a carry of circumstances linked to racism. That's what I've been saying. Among them, restrictions on where people could live and historical lacks of access to care play major roles. This is what I have been saying for the entire life. I've been saying a lot of this is due to racism. Now, when they talk about the Black care, the Black medical issues, they say, oh, well, that's probably because it's genetics. You know, you just have bad genetics. Black people, we make up the best athletes in the world. Black Americans, legendary athletes, the best of the best athletes. We make up the best athletes. Okay. Yet we just have bad genetics and we just get sick. They literally will tell you the same thing, which contradicts each other. We're so healthy. We make up the best sports athletes. We're the picture of healthy and fit people half the time, and then we're just the most disproportionately sick the other half the time. Because those two things make sense. That's what they tell you. When actually is racism because it's engineered. All right. Now, discrimination and bias in hospital settings have been disastrous. Continues to say, the national health disparities have had a tragic impact over the past 2 decades. The higher mortality rate among Black Americans resulted in 1.6 million excess deaths compared to white Americans. The higher mortality rate resulted in a cumulative loss of more than 80 million years of life due to people dying young and billions of dollars in health care and lost opportunity. All right. A year-long Associated Press project found that the health challenges Black Americans endure often begin before their first breath. Okay, so this is saying that it affects them in their mother's body when they're babies, when they're not even born. Okay, before they're even born. Okay, they face that stuff, and that's because of all of the racism and the medical issues that the pregnant mother has to go through. Then it continues to say, the AP, and this is AP News, the AP conducted dozens of interviews with doctors, medical professionals, advocates, historians, and researchers who detailed how a history of racism that began during the foundational years of America led to the disparities seen today. All right, and this is Angelica Lyons right here. Angelica Lyons' pregnancy troubles began during her first trimester with nausea and severe acid reflux. She was prescribed medication that helped alleviate her symptoms, but it also caused severe constipation. Now it says in the last week of October 2019, while she was giving her students a test, she was a teacher. While she was giving her students a test, her stomach started hurting badly. Quote, I remember talking to a couple of my students and they said, "You don't look good, Miss Lyons," Angelica recalled. She called the University of Alabama Birmingham hospital's labor and delivery unit to tell them that she was having a hard time using the bathroom and her stomach was hurting. A woman who answered the phone told her it was a common pregnancy issue, Angelica said, and that she shouldn't worry too much about it. See, this is what we were talking about when they call to get when they call to get medical help, they're always brushed off. Okay, they're always dismissed. Now she was calling way early, way before she had these problems. They were dismissing her. Okay. Now, continues to say, quote, she had me feel like my concern wasn't important. And because this was my first pregnancy, I decided not to go because I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I was overreacting, she said. And this is something that they do when it comes to pregnant Black women. They always are making it seem like, oh, you're overreacting. It happens all the time when women are pregnant. It's nothing severe. Just sit down and it'll be fine. They always do that. All right. Then it continues to say, the pain persisted. She went to the hospital a few days later and was admitted. She had an anemia, a procedure where fluids were used to cleanse and or stimulate the emptying of bowels, because she was constipated because of the medicine, she had medicine because she had a lot of stomach reflex and all that stuff. She was having bad pain, and they gave her medicine which made her constipated, and that's a bad issue as well too, especially when you're pregnant. It continues to say, to alleviate her constipation, but Angelica continued to plead with them that she was in pain. So she was in a very abnormal state of pain, where she was like, oh, it's where they were like, quote, where they were like, oh, it's nothing. It's just Braxton Hicks constipation. She said, they just ignored me. She sent me home, but she was sent home, but her stomach continued to ache. So she went back to the hospital a day later. Several tests, including MRIs, couldn't find the source of the issue. Angelica was eventually moved to the labor and delivery floor of the hospital so they could monitor her son's heartbeat, which had dropped slightly. Where they performed another anemia, if my pronunciation is off, yo, anemia that finally helped with the pain. She was also diagnosed with preeclampsia. If y'all know what I'm saying, preeclampsia, a dangerous condition that causes severe pregnancy complications or death. She began to vomit what appeared to be bile, and I explained what bile is, which is pretty much stomach acid. All right. Quote, I got worse and worse with the pain, and I kept telling them, hey, I'm in pain, Angelica said. They said, oh, you want some Tylenol, but it wasn't helping. So that's a lot of times too. Now, when it comes to pain medications, they give white people the strongest stuff. When it comes to Black people, oh, you want a little Tylenol? I'll give it to you. And they don't even give you like strong Tylenol or whatever the case is. They give you a Tylenol every 6 hours or something. And that's it. Then it continues to say, she struggled to eat dinner at night. When she stood up to go to the bathroom, she felt a sharp pain ricochet throughout her body, which is pretty much, sharp, just go through her body, pretty much what they said. Then she continues to say, quote, I started hollering because I had no idea what was going on, she said. I told my sister I was in so much pain and to please call the nurse. Then it continues to say, what happened next remains a blur. Angelica recalls the chaos of hospital staff rushing her to labor and delivery, putting up a blue sheet to prepare her for an emergency C-section as her family and ex-husband tried to understand what went wrong. All right. And in a lot of these cases, they don't even tell the black women like, hey, this is what's going to happen. If you feel any more pain, we might have to give you a C-section, whatever the case is. They don't even do that. They just rush you into the room to give you a C-section. Okay. They just rush you in there. They don't tell you what's going on. They make it seem like a C-section is the only option. There's no other option besides the C-section. And if you don't get it right now, you're going to die or the baby's going to die. That's how they make it seem. All right. Then she says, is right here, she later learned that she nearly died. I was on life support, recalled Angelica, who was only 34 years old. She coded, which coded means, I coded in the medical field. When somebody codes, that pretty much means they're not breathing and their heart stopped. That's pretty much what means when they say they're coded. So when somebody codes, all of the medical staff, what they do is they call out a signal, which is like a code blue. They'll call it code blue, and you'll see if you work in the medical staff or in the medical field. I mean, for the people who know that, they call it code blue, and everybody in the medical staff, they rush to whatever floor it's on to assist with the code blue, which means that the person has to be revived. That means CPR has to be done. That means that first, before the CPR gets done, they have to check the records, because some people might be DNR, which means do not resuscitate, which means if they do code, there's nothing that the medical staff can do because they can't do CPR because they're under do not resuscitate. A lot of times you'll see people who are on hospice be on DNR. A lot of people are on hospice, or like when they're very, very old, when they're like 97, they're on DNR, or whatever the case is. That's the case. But when they're cold, that means the nurses and the CNAs and all that, they have to go there because they have to start doing chest compressions. They have to use the face, I forgot what it's called, the face thing, so they can try to pump air into the body. Okay, so the person is essentially dead at that point. They haven't determined that the person is dead, but the person, the body is essentially dead, and they have to immediately go into reviving the body, which is what she's saying is happening to her. Okay. Now, she says she woke up 3 days later, unable to talk because of the ventilator in her mouth, which means she was literally on life support. They weren't even able to bring her back to consciousness. They were only able to bring her back to a point where her heart is beating. Okay. And they needed a ventilator because she couldn't breathe by herself. That's how bad it was for her. All right. And then she says she remembers gesturing wildly to her mother, asking about her son Malik, how her son Malik was. He was okay, thank goodness, thank God that the baby was okay. But he was okay. But Angelica felt so Angelica felt so much had been taken from her. She never got to experience those first moments of joy of having her newborn placed on her chest. And that's sad, okay? She didn't even know what her son looked like. All right. Now this is a video of the situation here.
She's so funny. She really thinks she run the house.
I don't know why hopefully you guys can hear it.
You gotta share, man. Don't snatch your phone. No, not Apple. No, we understand.
This is her sister,
We do.
and
Okay,
that's her
cool.
niece. They're gonna start talking
Able
about
to
the situation.
watch what she does and kind of piggyback off of it and get advice from her. So I think it's definitely made us closer. It has. They did a balloon in a month. The balloon burst in me. My mom, my sister, and my father were in the room. I got into bed. I felt this strong pain from like my vaginal area all the way up to my chest. I screamed. That was literally the beginning of literally them constantly leaving me in pain. I learned how to walk again.
Now, as you can see here, when she was holding the baby, close this. You still see this here for her because she still needs help breathing. Okay, then this was after she woke up when she finally got to see her son.
I learned how to walk again. I have now a whole. I didn't know that I was on life support for 2 or 3 days. Never knew that until now. I honestly thought that I was gonna lose her. It's scary knowing that I could have died. I couldn't. That my mom, my sister, my ex-husband would have to be, taking care of my son, and I wouldn't be here. And even in my records, I think they have it down that I have PTSD with that hospital.
Now, also too, if you saw, it said she suffered miscarriages. So a lot of times when you have complications when you're pregnant, a lot of times when women have complications when they're pregnant, it makes it difficult for them to have other babies too. So when they're pregnant and the doctor's doing a whole bunch of experiments such as C-sections and all that stuff, it makes it less likely for her to have a successful pregnancy after that.
My heart kind of dropped when he said that because I didn't want to go to that hospital. From what she had already gone through, I was traumatized.
Now, the reason why I'm not reading this is because all of this stuff is I read. Like, black babies are twice as likely as as white babies to be born prematurely. Sometimes leading to health complications down the road. All right. Now, this is something that they won't tell you. All they'll tell you is, oh, as long as you eat healthy and exercise, you'll be fine. But they don't factor all of these other things in, which just, I mean, eating healthy and exercising, it will always help. But the thing is that that's not the reason. The reason isn't because they eat too many hot dogs and burgers. The reason is because of racism.
I feel like they are taught that our pain levels are not that bad. And that's not true.
See, I just said J. Marion Sims. Remember the quote unquote father of gynecology. I opened up saying this, and he has you guys honestly, unless you probably work in the medical field or have some type of study of that, you guys don't know how praised this man is in the medical field, and he has been for many years, for centuries. He's been praised in the medical field as a medical genius, and this man was experimenting on enslaved black women without anesthesia. He was just cutting them open and digging in them and all that. Okay. And he's been praised until recently. He still has statues up. They still have literal statues of this. I don't even want to call him a man, of him all around. They teach about him in books and medical school and all that.
This man actually mangled and dismembered and tortured these women. His statue is at our state's capitol. I'm appalled. I still have a chip on my shoulder. There's a gynecological tool here. This represents the sutures and the way the legs are put together. They've been mangled. This is the legacy of slavery. We're dying from cervical cancer. We're dying from fibroid tumors because people don't listen to us. We're not believed when we speak or we're taken seriously. That is why the mothers are here today.
My whole pregnancy, there were plenty of times I didn't think I was going to live through it or that my baby was going to live through it. But God had his hands on me and him. So I am really blessed to be able to be sitting here today and for him to be perfectly healthy. It's days where I'm like, God, why am I going through this? But I have to remind myself, you know what? I'm here though. I'm alive. So guess what? I have to make the best of it. But one thing I have to always remind myself is make sure that you treat him and take care of him the best that you can.
Now, I'm glad that she was able to make it out of that. I really am. And it looks like the son is healthy, despite all of the racism that they had to face. It looks like she still had a healthy baby boy, so that's a blessing. Glad to see that she's still enjoying that, but still the PTSD, and nobody wants to talk about that because the PTSD also leads to stress, which earlier in this very live we talked about contributes to poorer health. So all of these things have to factor in. Now I want to show you another video, and because this was kind of trending a little bit on Twitter. Shout out to Nikki the God. She posted this. Okay. She said a black woman was left with sepsis and excessive post-surgical scar formation after a doctor performed a C-section. Remember what we were saying about C-sections on her. She said he had a vertical incision, which if you look it up, the incision aren't supposed to be vertical. A vertical incision, that's supposed to be outdated. They're not supposed to do that anymore. Okay, and sent her home with a wound sitting wide open. This was after she repeatedly expressed concerns about her condition. So we're going to play the video.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened is she actually she was showing her stomach to her son, to her baby, and a lot of people was all like, hey, what the hell? What is that? And this when she made the video about it.
I've been reading everybody's comments, and when they did me vertically for my son first, the doctor came in and basically said, we're scheduling you a C-section, and we're going to have to, cut you down vertically, because if we cut you with a bikini cut, you are going to get infection and it could affect the baby. And basically, she ended up, if you get infection, you can die, whatever. There were things that they could have done to prevent that from happening. They could have, like, they had, like, whole patches and stuff like that. With my daughter, I went into labor and she was coming out feet first. And they.
For those who don't know, when a woman is giving birth vaginally, the baby is supposed to come out head first. Okay? So, it's an issue. It's a problem when the baby starts to come out feet first. That's not the way the baby's supposed to come out. When they start to see that the head is not in the right place, what the doctors try to do is they try to actually manually turn the baby to make the baby's head come out first, because that's what's supposed to happen. All right. So I just want to take it back a little bit.
And when I went into the doctor and I went to the emergency room, I was turned around by 3 hospitals on that day. Ooh, my nails dirty. I was turned around by 3 hospitals. One hospital took me. They had never seen me when I was pregnant. The doctor I was supposed to go to, the hospital was like, we don't have room for you. So when I went in, the doctor was literally like, okay, let's go in. They strapped me up. The guy gave me an epidural in the middle of a contraction. And the midwife told him I'm having a contraction. So when they did my daughter's, they was like her heart rate was dropping. It was just dropping. So they were trying to hurry up and get her out. And then blood like squirted up on the little thing. But while I was in there, I was getting ready to leave. I had a wide open cut on my stomach. And I told the doctor it's a wide open cut. And when I told her that, she said I'll be fine. I went to the OBGYN 2 weeks later, and she was like, you need to go to the hospital because you have gone septic. I didn't know what that was. So I spent another 7 days in the hospital trying to get the infection out of my body. And I was left with my stomach looking like that. So, yeah.
So the doctors, and she has another video.
I didn't get the information I needed. So I hope that this helps somebody understand that you can advocate for yourself and tell them what you prefer.
So what happens, and I'm a pause it real quick. I'm a pause it real quick and tell you what happens in a lot of those. I swear to God, after this, I'm gonna get me some tea. I got some honey upstairs. I got some lemon. I'm gonna knock this thing right out. So I apologize for all of the times I had to stop. But what happens a lot of time is the black women who are the black mothers, right? When they go to the hospital, a lot of times they're given bad advice by the doctors. And they don't really, if unless they're in the medical field, or unless they know somebody who is in the medical field where they can get a second opinion from, they have to just listen to, okay, well, this is what the doctor said. I don't know it. The doctor got to know it. So that's what happens a lot of times. So a lot of times they just do whatever the doctor says. If the doctor says, we got to cut you vertically, which is just like straight down the middle and open you up like this and grab the baby out, then what you going to do? You know what I'm saying? Unless you know yourself, like, hey, no, there's another option. We can do something else. Unless you know that yourself. And most of the time, they don't know that, which is why you see a lot of times there was a video that went viral of a black woman. She was pregnant. I wish I could find it, but it was so many years ago. I don't even remember where I saw it, but she was pregnant and she was snapping off on the nurses because they was like doing something. And she was like, y'all know I'm a nurse. Okay. I am a nurse. I don't, just because y'all think that y'all can treat me any old type of way because I'm black or whatever the case is. I'm a nurse. I know about this. I know what I'm doing. Okay, I know what I'm talking about when I say you can't do this or you can't do this or whatever the case is. So, and then the doctor's like, oh, my bad, I'm sorry. And then they went to go fix the problem. So it's not like they always play this game. They always play this game where they act like they don't know what to do. And this is the only thing that they can come up with. And you have to do it or else you're going to die or the baby's going to die. And it's this major catastrophe. They always act like that, right? But the thing is that when the black person knows another alternative and they don't allow those games to be played, like, oh no, we don't need to rush into a C-section right now, there's other things you can do beforehand, or there's other medications that you can give me beforehand, or whatever the case is, then they have to listen to them. You know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, the black people who are uneducated, you know, and who don't really have any other where to go, they're kind of at the mercy of these racist doctors and nurses in the medical field. So I wanted to let you know that, and that's unfortunately what happened to this sister. Now, I want to let you know that before we get to the other video, because she had two. So let me see. All right.
Can I be
now again? Shout out to Nikki because she posted this on Twitter. All right.
honest? C-sections are scary. I know there are people on here wondering, oh my God, this is her butt. This is really my stomach, y'all. I had 2 C-sections, one March 10th of 2016 and another December 30th of 2017. Unfortunately, after my daughter was born, I ended up going septic. They had to cut me higher for her because she was an emergency C-section. She was supposed to have been born in March and she was actually born in December. So they cut me higher and the doctor sent me home after I told them that there was an issue. They still sent me home with a wide open cut with no help or assistance.
Another thing as well too, as far as the C-sections go, a lot of times black women experience that as well too, as far as like the surgery after the C-section, it not being done efficiently, right? So it winds up is not supposed to look like this. This is not what it's supposed to look like. And a lot of times what the doctor will do, the doctor will actually recommend a C-section. A lot of times the doctor will recommend a C-section and they'll say stuff like, oh, well, you know, with a C-section, it'll be faster. We'll give you medicine. It'll be less painful. You won't have to feel the pain. It'll be faster. And it will just, patch you back up and you'll be out of here. It's easier. They'll recommend a C-section and they'll say it's easier giving a C-section than it is giving the vaginal birth or whatever. It's less painful giving it that way or whatever the case is. So unfortunately for those who don't know about it, you know what I'm saying? For those who aren't aware of what the damages can be with a C-section, they'll be like, okay, well, I mean, if the doctor, of course, that's the doctor. If the doctor is insisting on a C-section, then I guess that's the smartest thing to do. So they do that, you know. Say YouTube is messing with you. The numbers have been very low in comparison to how they normally are. Normally the numbers are like twice as high as this, but twice or 3 times, to be honest, as high as this. But that comes with it, which is why it's important, because don't worry, we have the live numbers and then we have the playback numbers. So we can have a lot of the our normal numbers on the playback, you know. So let's make sure that we share this or whatever. Put this on your Facebook, put this on your what's that app? Twitter. Put this on your Twitter and share this to a family or friend, especially a woman who's given birth or had breast cancer or whatever the case is, you know, so we can get the information out, because this type, anything that deals with, and just search this up on YouTube, anything that deals with like black people's medical health gets really, really shadow banned on all social media, on any and all social media. It gets really, really shadow banned. So that's why we got to go out of our way to make sure that it doesn't. okay? Because they don't like us talking about this issue. And I try to make sure it's as thorough and touching on each aspect, because you have the stress factor, which is a factor in all of the situations, as far as breast cancer, as far as heart disease, as far as obesity, as far as having strokes, as far as pregnancy, as far as all of these other issues. The stress factor, which is due to the racial issue, due to the racial factor, you know, discrimination, the fact that we are poor people because of racism, the stress factor, the lack of adequate sleep, which adds to the stress factor, and the lack of adequate sleep is because a lot of Black people have to work crazy hours. A lot of Black people have to work different jobs, which leads them to inadequate sleep, you know, as well as other things as well too. The higher rates of depression and the higher rates of social anxiety and moodiness. And then that also leads to a lot of Black people eating less healthy. There's a lot more food deserts in the Black community. When you're working late night shifts, or when you're working multiple jobs, a lot of times you don't have time to cook, but you're hungry. So you know, I'm just going to pull up, I'm going to get me a burger and fries because I don't have time to go home, and I'm tired. First off, I either don't have time or I'm tired. I don't have, you know, the energy to go home and cook, or whatever the case is. I don't have time to meal prep, so I'm eating out every day. You know what I'm saying? So all of these things are factors. All of them are. And then, of course, with the fact that even if you are healthy and you do everything right and you eat right and you exercise, and then when you go to the hospital, when you have a pregnancy or when you have breast cancer, and I wanted to show those two different videos because they show that when a woman has breast cancer and she goes to the doctor, it's a cyst, it's not a big deal, it's not cancer, go away. And then she has to get a second opinion, and then they find out later on, and if you guys know about cancer, the sooner you treat it, the better it is. So when you find out later on, it's more dangerous. So when you find out later on it's cancer, then you have to really, really take it serious. Even though you have to take all of it serious, you have to take it much more seriously, because it's dangerous. It's more dangerous at that point when you find out about it at a later stage. Okay. And then I also wanted to show you that when it comes to the pregnancy as well too, because when Black women are pregnant, they'll go to the hospital and they'll say, hey, I'm feeling pain, I'm getting cramps, I'm, you know, headaches, because headaches is one, I can't sleep, cold sweats, all of these things are going on with me. Not only the health of the woman, but the health of the baby as well too. And the doctors are very dismissive. The doctors always blow that off. It's nothing. It always happens with pregnancy. Just go away. Just here's a Tylenol. Just here, take Tylenol, go away. And they wind up either losing their own lives, or the baby losing their life, or the baby having health issues, or the mother having health issues. It's all of that plays into a really big factor. Okay. All of that does. And a lot of y'all were in the chat room. I appreciate you guys for being in there. Your comments let me know that a lot of you guys probably experience certain things like this as well too. So it's very important that we get the information out there so we can, you know, be proactive when it comes to the health, which means number one, try to find things to relieve some of the stress that you go through. If preferably, try not to work third shift. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but preferably try not to do that, especially if you have other things you have to do throughout the day, so you can get an adequate amount of sleep. So preferably don't try not to do that. Try to de-stress yourself so your stress levels stay at a certain, I guess, a normal amount. Try to eat healthier, try to meal prep so you're not always eating the fatty and unhealthy foods all of the time. And I'm not saying you can't have a slice of pizza here or there, but everything's okay with moderation. You know what I'm saying? So you have to, you know, have a balance with it. Can't be eating out all of the time. You know, sometimes you cook some food, save some food, leftovers, all that stuff. You know, Also, too, when it comes to the screening for breast cancer, I personally, now I'm not a doctor or nothing, but I would personally recommend that at the age of 30 is really when Black women should, like every 2 years, get a screening for it. Okay, because and don't let anybody tell, even if you want to start younger, if you want to start in your mid to late 20s, don't let anybody tell you that you're too young for cancer, because that is no such thing as that. Now, cancer does go up. The risk of cancer does go up as you get older, but don't let anybody say, "Oh, well, you're 32 years old. You can't have cancer. You're 32." It's probably not that. Even if that's not likely cancer, even it might be a cyst or something like that. They check under the armpits. It might be a hair bump or whatever the case is. Be careful with that. You know what I'm saying? So don't let nobody tell you. So even if you feel a type of way and a doctor dismisses you or whatever the case is, try to see another doctor. Even if your doctor's reliable, still try to keep like 2 different doctors or something so you can have a second opinion. Because even if the doctor isn't racist and not trying to do you bogus, the doctor might be wrong. So definitely go see another opinion, especially when it comes to certain specific things. When it comes to pregnancy, I would definitely recommend, especially, and I know it's easier said than done, definitely recommend taking all actions to make sure the pregnancy is as helpful as possible. A lot of people are into doulas too. A lot of people say that's helpful. So if you need to do that, do that. If you are feeling any type of pain, like how the sister Angelica was feeling, if you're feeling any type of pain, if you're throwing up bile, stomach acid, that's not normal. So definitely go see a doctor. If the doctor ignores you, go see another doctor, go see another professional, or whatever the case is. And it's difficult, I understand that, but sometimes it's necessary for that to happen. So you got to take your health very serious. Okay. You said, I had 2 doctors and a doula. Okay, certified nurse midwife. Definitely that, and the A's. You need that because your health and the baby's health is also important too. Because when the baby is premature like that, the baby has a lot of issues that can happen. Hopefully they don't, not all the time, but a lot of times the baby will have issues when it comes to breathing. So the baby will always have like breathing issues. The baby will always have like heart issues. The baby will sometimes have brain issues if the baby does survive, depending on how premature the baby is. And if that's the case, even if everything turns out fine in that pregnancy, the next pregnancy might not be able to be successful. You might have miscarriages every other time after that, or other health issues every other time after that being pregnant. So you definitely want to make sure every single pregnancy you're on your P's and Q's every single time throughout the entire pregnancy. Well, we've been on here and we've talked a lot about a lot of different issues. This broadcast, we've been on here for 2 hours. I knew this was going to be pretty long, so thank you all for being here with me. If you guys are watching this on a playback, if you guys can leave a comment, let me know what you guys thought about this in the comment section below. I would greatly appreciate that. Also, you can follow me on my various social media pages, which is in the description below, but it is right here, which is Afro Elite on Instagram, and then the Afro Elite on Twitter. I want to thank every single last one of you all for being here with us this evening. It's been very educational. I've been meaning to do this for a very, very long time, but with everything coming up, I finally had the time to really do it the way I wanted to do it. So I appreciate you guys for being here, and just look after yourself, look after your fellow Black sister, your wife, your girl, your mom, or whoever the case is. Look out for each other, all right? Because it's dangerous out here. So I will catch you guys later. Getting back to my regular scheduled program, which is a live Monday, recorded video Tuesday and Wednesday, and then another live Thursday. So tomorrow I already have it all lined up. I'm gonna post this schedule too again. I'm gonna repost it. I posted it before. I'm gonna repost it again, and then I'm gonna post that on Twitter. I be forgetting that name of the app sometimes. So I'm gonna get off here. I gotta make me some tea with some lemon and honey and all that good juices and berries and all that stuff. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much. B1 salute to every single last one of you all. And of course, you all have a good day.